Alright, so in today's video, I got the Platinum Trophy on Metal Gear Solid 3 Delta Snake Eater. Konami really chose to add the most words possible to that title. I love it. But this game just came out yesterday on the 26th for those that bought the Digital Deluxe Edition, although it has been out for quite some time, given to people for reviews, guides, early access in general, which is why there's already so many Platinums on the game and just Platinum guides for the game in general. I, however, did not get given any sort of early access or special perks, but maybe if the channel was at 1 million, we would have been noticed by the gods above. Also, if we do hit 1 million subs, I have to Platinum Fortnite, which is one of the hardest Platinums ever, so make sure to drop a like and subscribe. Anyways, yeah, Metal Gear Solid Delta just released, as I was saying. This is a remake of the third game in the series that came out back in 2004 on the PS2. Fun fact, this game was released before I was even conceived in my mother's womb. So today was truly a time capsule experience, but I've never once played, purchased, bought, or seen a single thing from a Metal Gear game, aside from a single sound effect I use in my videos that I really like. God, it's just so emotionally deep. Oh my God. Anyways, Metal Gear Solid Delta has a total of 46 trophies, including the Platinum Trophy. It took me personally around 16 hours to complete, although PowerPix's guide on it, which I did follow today, has it placed at around 20 to 25 hours, and it's also rated at a 5 out of 10 in difficulty, so it's not a breeze. But starting off the grind of the game, you first have to choose your difficulty, and for the purposes of platinuming this, I did everything on very easy for my first run, because stage 1 of the platinum is to grab every single collectible, do a non-lethal playthrough, and all the missable trophies inside of it. The missable trophies, by the way, consist of every single trophy in the game aside from the story ones. But you actually get a trophy from just loading into the game on either legacy or new style gameplay, and I went with new style because I'm a new gen gremlin, and it also makes the movement far easier than legacy. But then you do begin the mission, and the initial premise of this game was to save a scientist who was deep in enemy lines. But for spoiler purposes, I'm not going to spoil too much about the game's lore aside from the boss fights, considering they are a major part of this game and its difficult trophies. Like I said though, the first run is that heavy collectible run, and there's over 200 of them, which is honestly horrid. It made the run drag on for a very long time, and huge thanks to the guy from PowerPix again. But even with his guide, this took me around 7 hours to get every single collectible and finish the run. You also do get trophies from just hitting the first Gakko, which is the orange duck collectible, having 64 total, and then the Keraton, which is the green duck collectible, having 64 as well. Now, hitting these both have trophies from doing them all. However, you also get an extremely overpowered camo to use in the hard playthrough after, so making sure not to miss these is essential. In the same starting area, however, I would also get more trophies because they popped like crazy in this run, but I got a trophy right after from just capturing any animal alive, and you have to do this on every single animal in the game, by the way, because there is another trophy from eating every animal as well. And speaking of eating animals, I also ate a snake right after that last trophy, and it gave me the trophy called Snake Eater. Shout out to trophy lists that have relative titles, my favorite subculture genre in this already saturated niche. But I would then move on a little bit, and I was pretty much saving my game every time I finished an area's collectibles, just so I could have a fresh start in the next one on the off chance that I scuffed up following the guide. But every time you do save this game, you have to talk to this paramedic chick, and she sometimes goes off on a little tangent talking about random things, and if you're lucky, she will talk about movies, and then you get a trophy from listening to her do that. Anyways, right after that trophy, I reached this little swampy area that had crocodiles in it, and you have to kill one of them for its meat to eat that for the food trophy. But being a brand new Metal Gear player, I had no clue how you do close quarter combat at the start, so I just kind of shot it with a non-lethal gun, and then I got put on my ass shortly after. But while I was down there, I rolled in some mud, which increased my camo index, and I then accidentally crawled into cover, which put it at over 90%. And this is a measure of how invisible we are, so you really have to pay attention to that when in the hard difficulty runs, due to yourself being spotted way easier. Moving on, I was then kind of through the easy or immediate trophies, and the next one I would get was called Young Gun from stunning Ocelot. Ocelot is one of the villains in this game, but he's also kind of funny and a bit passive. Huge shout out to the ending with him, by the way. I found that very funny, and his name also goes hard. Like, imagine dying to some dude named fucking Ocelot. Straight out of Minecraft, on God. But you pretty much just go to this warehouse where the scientist is at, you rescue him sort of, and then Ocelot shows up with his tiny pistol just spinning it, and after a ton of cutscenes, everyone is stunned. The trophy also pops here as well. But you can also get another one here from saving your game and then just stabbing Ocelot. Ignore me stabbing his comrade. It was a misinput, I promise. There's a misinput! But yeah, stabbing him causes a time paradox because he is a key character in the franchise, and here's that trophy. Moving on, we then got back to more missable trophy farming because there's a ton of these. But you also get confronted by the boss, who is our old teacher and shit. I don't totally understand who she is just from my lack of knowledge in this game series, but in this game, she's the villain and then sends enemies after us like crazy after these cutscenes. You can get a trophy here, however, from saving first and then throwing a poisonous creature at one of the enemies that come up to fight you, and I had this poisonous animal from earlier collectibles, by the way. Upon doing this, though, the trophy pops. Now, if you're wondering why I keep on saying you have to save before doing this trophy, it's because they can cause deaths, and we are going for a non-lethal run as stated in the first run's objectives. A little bit later in the story, though, you also end up cycling back through this bridge area, and the game backtracks a lot flying and stuff, which is kind of an odd thing that it does. However, all things considered, it's not a big deal and it really doesn't matter. But upon coming to this bridge during nighttime, you can get a trophy from shooting this bee's nest down on an enemy standing below it. And obviously, you can tell what's going to happen to the poor lad now. So moving on, like 10 minutes later of playing, I reached that warehouse again in daytime, and we got ambushed by a ton of enemies. But seeing as I am on very easy, however, this was not hard at all. And this entire playthrough for the most part is a breeze. But this combat section on extreme blows harder than Lana Rhodes did in her prime. After it, however, I got a few trophies from missable stuff. The first one I got was by just going into photo mode and then leaving it because I felt like doing that right here, so I did. You also get given the scientist outfit after that previous combat section I just talked about. And moving forwards in the story takes you to a bit of a swampy area, and there's a lot of mud around the shore. Upon laying in the mud, you also get a trophy called Mud Scientist from, yup, you guessed it, getting in the mud as a scientist. But there was a ton of collectibles here with plants and animals, and I spent quite some time in this spot. The next area was also, in my opinion, the most annoying normal area of the game, but only because I had no clue how the CQC mechanics work. And for those of you unaware of that abbreviation, close quarter combat, or, you know, hand-to-hand combat, punching, kicking, all that bullshit. And there's a few trophies in this game from grabbing enemies and then interrogating them, but I had no idea how you do that, and the game doesn't really explain it that well. So it took me dying repeatedly over and over, both from resetting, but also from electric fences. Yeah, they put the enemy you need to grab and interrogate posted up right aside a deadly hazard. I love you, Konami. I'm 100% saying that wrong, I can't lie.
Black dick.
Anyways, eventually I got super upset and I started to just press random buttons as my solution, resulting in me doing a CQC slam and getting a trophy, which was kind of hype. I did finally manage to figure out the whole interrogation mechanics though, and it's done by just holding the buttons and not pressing them. Who would have thought that? It really took some advanced thinking. But while interrogating the guy, you also do need to cycle through the actual interrogation buttons numerous times to get a special prompt in order to call in fire support, which is a missionable trophy. It's very odd and I still don't totally know how I did it, but I did do it and got the trophy, and I can move on with my life, thankfully. A few minutes after that area down the path, there was a storehouse full of TNT, and if you blow it up, you get another trophy, which I did right here because I love bursting everywhere. There was also the first boss fight of the game afterwards, and it was against Ocelot. The fight overall is actually super easy, and it's very underwhelming. You don't even get a trophy after it ends, so that's an L. But you do get a trophy from winning against the Pain, who is the next guy we boss fought. And all the bosses in this game have very alluring names. The Pain, for example, but there is also a guy named The End, a guy named The Sorrow, and then The Wife Abuser. It actually shocked me upon seeing that one. But the Pain's boss fight wasn't that bad. You can pretty much just spam stun and smoke grenades on him and then shoot him in the head with a non-lethal. My gameplay in the first run did a very bad showcase of this, but from my hard playthrough run, that was the method to kill him as quick as possible. Anyways, as I said, upon defeating him, a trophy pops from the conflict. And quite a while later, we then ran up on another boss who I just mentioned named The End. And this boss is actually just a completely normal old guy. And he's actually so old that if you set your console time to a week later when fighting him, he will just die of old age when you restart your game. It's actually hilarious. And before you actually make it to his boss fight, you see him on these docks, and if you save and then snipe him in the face, killing him, you get a trophy called the Early End from killing him before the fight begins. And you also get the trophy from beating him in general because technically we did. The fight against the End, you know, the real one, is actually not for quite some time, and the boss you fight before him was called the Fear. And this fight is probably the most frustrating and hard out of them so far. The Fear is an enemy who just jumps around trees with a cloak on and then spams bolts at you, which also occasionally blow up. You also fight him in a forested area with traps set up in every direction, and this on extreme difficulty is a pain in the ass to get past. But on very easy, there is like none of them, so it's not bad at all. The fight is still annoying though, just because he jumps around like a crazy freak. But once you do kill him, the trophy pops, and there's some very disturbing cutscenes that follow. Snake's face resembles my reaction, on God. Right after the fight though, you get to just explore the area freely, and this is also the location where we need to farm a trophy called Believe It or Not from catching this very odd named snake, which I am not even going to attempt to say. But you can set up these 2 mouse traps before a door leading to the next area. Then every time you leave it and re-enter it, it will catch 2 random snakes every single time. You do have to reset the traps, but it doesn't take that long. And then you have to do this over and over until catching the snake, and it took me about 20 minutes to get this done. The RNG was not on my side whatsoever. But as soon as you do pick it up, the trophy pops. And you actually need to keep this snake until the end of the game for a certain camo, which is funny. But the next thing that happened was that end boss fight after some more progress in the story, finally. Now we won't get a trophy from this, unfortunately, which did take the fun out of the actual fight against him, because the real fight kind of sucks. It's not horrible if you're good at stealthing, but he literally just snipes at you the entire time in cover. Again though, it's not hard, just annoying, I guess. You can still get a trophy here though, and should, from just sneaking up on him and holding him hostage until he drops an item for us, which then gives you the trophy. Also, the item he drops, by the way, can then be used to achieve 100% camo, which upon getting that is another trophy. But after that, you just have to beat him. Like I said, it's just annoying, and upon doing so, no trophies pop because we already defeated him previously. Moving on, I then reached the infamous ladder scene, which I actually have heard of before slightly. Absolutely gorgeous gameplay. The simplicities of gaming here, boys and girls. We need more games that have 3-minute climbing scenes, on God. But the next trophy I got was called Houston, we had a problem. And this is from beating the Fury, who is a boss that has one of the simplest fights, literally just running down hallways shooting fire at you. The fight isn't challenging at all or interesting at all, to be honest. It's also super dark while you fight him, so my second cousin DeMarcus would have had an easy ass time with this fight. But once beating him, the trophy pops and here it is. Quite a while later, you also do end up getting thrown in prison, and I had no clue how to escape, so I did look up quite a few methods on how to do it because the game doesn't really say. I found somewhere that said you should use a fake death pill, so I did, and I got a trophy from that. However, I didn't actually have a revive pill, so yeah, that's unfortunate. But the way I got out was from making Snake throw up, which is yet again another trophy, and then I made it out by strong-arming the prison guard. This next area of gameplay was then pretty ass. It's also the hardest stealth section of the game because you have no items, no camos, literally nothing. But again, on very easy, it's like impossible to die, and you can quite literally just run through everyone to the objective. The objective, by the way, was to make it to the sewers, and then you also do have to run through the sewers while being chased by dogs. And surprisingly, the dogs in this game pose almost no threat, which is a very interesting direction to take. The sewers, however, led into a fight against Sorrow, and this is the easiest boss fight of the game. You can literally win it by just taking the death pill and then using a revive one right after, and that wins the fight. But I was unaware of this, so I just had to let him kill me because I didn't really know what I was doing. Still used the revive pill though, and after the cutscenes, the trophy pops from beating him. There was then quite some time between that trophy and my next one. A lot of stealthing was needed through facilities, but you end up fighting Vulgan, who is the dude I said earlier was named the wife beater. And I said that because he just looks like my stepdad, so I know firsthand. His fight is also quite challenging, even on very easy mode, just because he deflects a lot of attacks, and on extreme difficulty, it's a damn lobotomy, but that's a story for later. But first, I got a trophy from just using a knife and removing a bullet that he sunk into my body, so here's that. Anyways, back to the real fight. I realized quite fast that shooting him barely worked, so I just resorted to doing CQC on the guy over and over and over. Fun fact, you also can't kill this guy since he has legit plot armor in this game, but the trophy after that fight pops regardless. And we are actually nearing the end of the game now. The next trophy I got was the fight against the Shagohod, which is this giant ass tank creation. There was a super annoying chase scene before though, which had collectibles scattered all around, and I do not appreciate it. Shout out to autosave for saving me after I missed over and over. But the fight against the Shagohod and Vulgan after that was also fairly easy. I didn't totally know at first how to do it, so it took me a minute to figure it out. But legitimately, all you do is shoot rockets at the treads to temporarily disable the vehicle, then shoot Vulgan in the head enough times until his stamina is gone, and that's that. Here's the trophy. So all of the trophies I have left now are from the ending of the game. There was one more chase scene that did occur though. It functioned the same as the former one. There was also a very weird escort Eva part, which basically just had me put everyone to sleep and then also put her to sleep and drag her ass there because she wouldn't walk any further from being so tired. But that was the last gameplay part before the finale of the game and the final boss fight against the boss. And you can actually get multiple trophies here. The first ones I got were both of those collectibles, which I did get because I didn't miss any due to my perfectionist ass ensuring this would happen smoothly. But then you just have to beat her, and the fight is actually the easiest out of any in the game. I didn't do it all that well on my first run, but even on the hardest difficulty, you can just sit in good camo and then snipe her in the face over and over until she's done. Upon winning, the trophy pops, and that's all of the gameplay for this game, aside from that playing scene with Ocelot where you do Russian roulette and there is blanks in the gun. So funny, guys, so funny. But even funny guys have hard landings in water, and that shit looked painful. Ocelot wasn't done with us, however, because in the last cutscene of this game, if you turn your character while talking to the president, you can see him in the window, and that's also a trophy. But then I just got numerous trophies after finishing the game, you know, from beating the game without killing anyone, doing it on any difficulty, obtaining all of the camos, food collection, and also just going into the food collection section to begin with in the extras. But I did still have a few trophies that I missed from earlier, one of which was from holding up an enemy, and I swore I did this, but I guess not. So I just reset my game back to the area I f***ed up on with the interrogation trophies because I knew it oh so well. And I just held up an enemy after finally figuring out the mechanics to use that trophy. I also called in a healing radio frequency, which I have no clue what that is, but the trophy still popped. Anyways, my last trophy before the extreme playthrough I had to get was just from quickly loading into a legacy style game, and here's that trophy. Now only one more remains. Foxhound. Acquire the Foxhound title, which is the hardest trophy in the game by far. This means we need to play the game on the hardest difficulty, being extreme, but also beat it in less than 5 hours, have 0 continues, 0 alert phases, 0 humans killed, and also have 20 or less serious injuries, take less than 5 life bars of damage, and use no life-saving medicine or special items at any time. Now the only real challenging ones out of that list is the 0 alert phases and the no human kills. Everything else is easily avoidable and not really much to worry about. But this playthrough is brutal in almost every way. It is made much easier with the AT camo that you should have unlocked by now, because that makes you have at least 80% camo rating when in prone in almost any situation. And usually you're sitting at 90 or better if you choose well blended color patterns. Anyways, before I do start highlighting the hardest parts of this game that I struggled with, I do want to say another huge shout out and thank you to PowerPix for their guide on this mode. I didn't watch their video one, but rather just the text one on the website. I was also following another video from Backseat Guides, who had a great video on this difficulty as well that helped majorly. But the first instance where I struggled a lot was that combat section and the place the Ocelot first shows up in, but afterwards when those enemies come in like crazy. The first method I tried doing was just shooting at kneecaps for a while, because you can't get alerted when you're down there and they swarm you once you start doing that, but I never had enough ammo to do this. Eventually I figured out though, if you just prone in grass, you'll get a 95% camo rating, and this means they basically cannot spot you even if they are on top of you and you shoot them. I got almost every enemy dead doing this in the same spot, and then I just snuck around to get the last few who are off in corners of the area. And the Ocelot boss fight itself was also not bad, because you can just spam stun grenades with the grenade camo and it's honestly easy as hell. However, the Pain boss fight was straight liquid diarrhea ass farts with how hard it is. His attacks are just annoying as and they can kill you if you don't counter them correctly at any point. The best method I found was to obviously spam smokes or stuns on him, then get a few headshots as he's recovering, but I also heavily was just waiting in water behind these rocks because they block a large portion of his attacks, just due to us having natural cover while still being somewhat in control of our own movement. But it really does just take time to master what works, see patterns, and learn from mistakes. And tips I got from both guides I was following was also a big help with shooting the bee grenades and things like that. The fear fight, however, after was even worse than Pain's because of the traps, the movement of him in general, his attacks, but also because once he reaches below half HP, he just stops fighting you completely, and then he goes off to eat animals, plants, literally anything to heal himself. And he would do this over and over if you don't take away all of his chances of healing. And this is why for the majority of the fight, you actually need to just run around and gather like the best damn hunter-gatherer that ever hunted and gathered. About to become native of the year with this performance. But once he does reach half stamina from naturally draining himself out, I also found that popping the fake death pill can mess up his code of movements because it makes him go for us and not search for food, which allows for us to f him up and then continue to after he's on the run. And when he is rapidly searching for food, you can actually just spam him with attacks, and if you're lucky, he'll eat a few poison frogs here and there, and the fight should be over quickly after that. The Fury boss fight is also easy, to be honest. You do need the sniper from end to do it, but other than that, it's very simple to do and not a challenge. And the only other real hard part about this game besides the ending fights was that shirtless stealth section, and I also did it without pretty much anything. I did use a few smokes to get to this final area, but I legit found that you can do it without anything once you do reach this spot, and all you have to do is hard run to like the second tank, which alerts the people nearby, then go prone and watch the guard pass you, then you just crouch run the entire way to the sewers, and you have to quickly make it there before the dogs do get alerted. Now, like I said, the only hard parts left were the Vulgan fight, and that's honestly it. The chase scene is whatever because you can just use the camera to get through it pretty easily, and then the actual boss fight is a joke, but this Vulgan fight is as rough as it's gonna get. The method to do it is to first do a CQC to initiate the fight and also roll over him for more damage. I then just baited his pulse move with my gun, and I did this so he charges up a little bit. I hit another CQC, then for the rest of stage 1 of the fight while he's in the middle of the room, you can just run behind him and spam shots at his head. And you can also use lethal in this fight, by the way, because he has plot armor. But in the second stage of the fight, you need to prone instantly to dodge an attack that will hit you if you aren't prone. And the method I found was to do a combo of a few things. The first thing you can do is use this mask face paint to become one of his associates, which distracts him and allows us to get a few headshots on him. But then you can also use that fake death pill revive thing as well here. And then for the remainder of the fight, it's kind of just an all-out attack. You have to run around a lot and pretty much just try not to die while spamming attacks at him. I barely made it out alive, but hey, winning is winning. And like I said, the chase scene isn't bad. That rocket launcher tank fight also isn't bad either, and the boss fight itself isn't bad as well. So that was it for the extreme run, and once I finished, I got the Foxhound rating and the final trophy along with the Platinum Trophy pop on Metal Gear Solid 3 Delta Snake Eater. But here's my final time and ratings of everything, by the way, if you were curious on that run. And once more, Instagram and Twitter saw it first, so follow me on those linked below. But that was the Metal Gear Solid 3 Delta Snake Eater Platinum Trophy experience. Overall, I think the game was a blast. Obviously, going for the Platinum itself takes away some fun, but the trophies in the game were actually quite entertaining just because of how many random ass things you had to do. I always love when games are more heavy on the random funny stuff opposed to just like kill 35 enemies, get 45 headshots, dumb stuff like that. But I hope you all enjoyed. I was number 28 on the first achievers list, currently the 9th fastest, but I bet that will drop because the game can be speedrun quite quick if you're good at it and know what you're doing, and I am not the best as you have seen. Anyways, that's all for today, boys. Thanks for watching once more. 1 million subs is almost here, and I love you guys.